back to calls in a moment, but we will be getting regular updates on the news as it comes in with our various correspondents, and we're going to cross now to Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent. Hello, Simon. What's the latest?
Clive. Well, the news has just come in from Iran. Iranian State Television is now confirming that the country's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed as a result of the US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran, or, as Iran's state broadcaster puts it, he was martyred in those US and Israeli airstrikes. And Iran's state media organizations are also reporting that, and this again is in their words, earlier reports of the martyrdom of the daughter, son-in-law and granddaughter of the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, have also been confirmed. So that would seem to confirm that it was a massive strike on a compound where Iran's supreme leader and members of his family were located on Saturday morning in Tehran as those US and Israeli airstrikes got underway. It wasn't just the supreme leader who, at the age of 86, was killed very early on in those airstrikes, but also members of his family, the daughter, the son-in-law and granddaughter. It is interesting that no mention is being made on either side about the son of the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has been mentioned in the past as a possible successor to his father, were the regime to find itself in a situation where it needed new leadership. The view here in Washington and in other world capitals is that the leadership in Iran will have prepared some kind of succession strategy. First of all, they will have been well aware that military action against them was possible at multiple times over the course of the last several years, but also the supreme leader at 86 was battling ill health, and so there had already been talk about what kind of a transition might occur. Now, clearly, under current circumstances, a transition is going to be complicated because Israel says another round of military attacks is currently taking place across Iran. The United States has spoken about ongoing significant combat operations, although whether President Trump is still committed to days and days of this, I think is in some doubt after some of the statements that he made to media organizations earlier today, in which he indicated that he is willing to find an off-ramp and possibly even to see another round of negotiations with the Iranians. I should tell you that Iran's television networks are also reporting, and there is no independent confirmation of this at all, that, as they put it, hundreds of American troops have been killed in retaliatory Iranian military operations. They claim that 14 US bases were targeted by Iranian missiles. We've certainly heard no indication at all from the United States government today that there have been casualties among US members of the armed forces, who of course have been flooded into the region by President Trump over the last couple of weeks. But the big breaking news coming from Iranian state television, and I do think it's important, this, Clive, because when President Trump just 3 hours or so ago claimed that Iran's supreme leader had been killed in that airstrike, many people were saying, well, what proof is the United States providing of this? And it was a fair question, because the United States hasn't provided any proof of it other than that satellite photograph that shows total devastation being caused to the compound in which the Israelis and the Americans have been saying the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was sheltering. Now, this confirmation from Iran's state media organizations seems to be the final word at the end of the best part of 18 hours in which the Iranians had steadfastly been denying publicly that he had been killed. So now, presumably, the remnants of the regime, whatever is left of it, and the Israelis are claiming that a dozen or so top officials were also killed in that first round of airstrikes today, but the remnants of the regime presumably are going to begin the process of engaging in some kind of a succession, even as Iranian government sites continue to be targeted by the United States and the Israeli militaries.
Now, you follow Trump very closely, as we all know. So we've been talking this morning about what Trump's motive is. What is the real reason for doing this? Is it about the nuclear capability? Is it about making himself a bit of a hero? Is it about oil? Why would he choose to do this? It is a very big political gamble, isn't it?
It's a massive political gamble. This is the geopolitical equivalent, Clive, of playing a game of 52-card pickup on the world stage. Because let's be absolutely clear, the Americans have no strategy here. President Trump, even in that address at 2:30 in the morning local time here in Washington yesterday, he of course is down in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, was unable to explain to the American public exactly why the United States was doing this, and was unable to explain what the strategy is going forward, other than urging the Iranian people to rise up and seize their opportunity to take circumstances in their country into their own hands. And yet that message was measured against the president also saying to the Iranian people, but stay home, shelter in place, don't go outside, there are bombs raining down all over the place and it's very dangerous. So how he expected them to rise up and take control of the country at a time when he was also saying, whatever you do, don't leave home, is very unclear. He also told members of the Revolutionary Guard, that brutal military force, that only in January and in December the regime was using to cut down protesters demonstrating against its rule. Between 20 and 30,000 at least are reported to have been killed on the streets of Iran by the Revolutionary Guard. The president was saying to them, lay down your weapons and surrender and you'll be given total immunity. But to whom were they supposed to surrender? There was no one to surrender to, and he couldn't possibly know that that guarantee of total immunity was going to be delivered upon by Iran's next government.
Doesn't make any sense. I mean, that would make sense if there was ground troops and an actual invasion.
You've got to have someone to surrender to, because also there's going to be furious Iranians on the streets who may want to mete out reprisals to those Revolutionary Guard members. I mean, in terms of why the president has done this, I think it's for every reason in the book. He needs a change in the storyline here. The storyline here is dominated by the Supreme Court eviscerating his tariffs, the partial U-turn that he's engaged in Minneapolis after his own federal agents managed to gun down totally unnecessarily and shamelessly 2 American citizens on the streets of Minneapolis. We're seeing approval ratings on the part of the president absolutely cratering. On every issue in the book, he has been facing reverses. And so the need for some sort of a distraction, particularly as fresh questions were being raised about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, will have been very tempting and tantalizing, even if it's a huge roll of the dice, and there's not much more Donald Trump likes than a big roll of the dice. I mean, he does take these big set-piece military actions, often without knowing how he's going to condition the outcome of the situation on the ground. I think that he's probably been told by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, who of course visited the White House within the last couple of weeks, that the sheer brute power of the combined Israeli and American militaries, now between them with 500 combat aircraft in that theatre, have the power to depose the Iranian government. And it's, you can actually hear Prime Minister Netanyahu's voice in the cadences that President Trump used today about every American president has failed to take this action. I'm the first one brave enough to do something like this to try and liberate Iran. But whether it all pays off is a huge question. He may be thinking about trying to do a Venezuela-style arrangement here. I mean, he thinks that Venezuela went very well. He invaded, he was in and out in a matter of hours, he deposed President Nicolas Maduro and took him back to New York to face trial. And then he took control, he kept the regime in place, and then took control of the country's oil industry. Well, you could see a set of circumstances in Iran that is similar to that, even though it would mean selling the Iranian people down the river. But he's taken out the Supreme Leader and a whole raft of other senior Iranian figures. Now maybe the regime somehow cobbles together a provisional government to try and keep going, and he does a deal with them to gain access to Iran's oil fields. I mean, last week in Geneva, he was being offered the possibility of a deal on oil by the government led by the now dead Supreme Leader. So it may well be that that is a significant factor driving his desire to engage in the action that he engaged in over the last 24 hours, but also driving his desire to start talking, as he did today to the website Axios here, about the possibility of looking for an off-ramp in the next 2 or 3 days.
And just one other question. How do you think this is playing out with the American public? Is this popular?
Well, I think the American public is bemused because this is a president who came to power saying that he was going to end America's forever wars and he was not going to get the country embroiled in conflicts in far-off places about which Americans knew nothing and cared even less. And here he is suddenly potentially sparking another forever war. I mean, certainly that's what he's been warned by the country's allies in the region. And nothing in what the president said at 2:30 in the morning down in Mar-a-Lago or what he said in the State of the Union address has prepared the American public for why it's worth putting American lives at risk. He talks about an imminent national security threat to the United States posed by Iran, but this is the same Iran that only last July he claimed had had its nuclear stockpile obliterated by those bunker-busting bombs that he said had completely degraded Iran's capacity to build a nuclear weapon. 7 months later, suddenly, we're supposed to believe that they were a week away from being able to create bombs that could cause all sorts of devastation here in the United States. One figure from within his own Make America Great Again movement has gone public today to excoriate him, and that's the former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. She left Congress and she's really positioning herself for the eventual leadership battle within MAGA. She argues that she now is authentic MAGA, and she took to X a few hours ago to say, I did not campaign for this, I did not donate money for this, I did not vote for this in elections or Congress. This is heartbreaking and tragic. She was referring there specifically to claims that as many as 50, perhaps more, school children were killed in when a missile hit a school as part of that initial assault on the country. This is heartbreaking and tragic, and how many more innocents will die? What about our own military? This is not what we thought MAGA was supposed to be. And she simply ends the post with the word shame. Now, I think he's got an enormous amount of explaining to do, and frankly, it was surprising tonight, this afternoon here, when the White House made it clear that he was not going to be speaking to the public again today. No address to the nation. They called a lid, as they put it, which means that the press are told there's nothing else coming out of Mar-a-Lago, I think at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. It's now coming up to 9 o'clock in the evening here. And, you know, the country's got a large number of military personnel at risk in the region, and the president, other than that 8-minute address to the country at 2:30 in the morning saying major combat operations have begun, has done nothing to explain to the country why this is a national security priority for the United States. Let's see what comes out tomorrow when the Sunday television talk shows take place here. One other bit of news, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has announced that he is not now travelling to Israel next week. He was supposed to, we were told on Thursday that he was going to be heading to Israel next week, which led everyone to believe that there would be no military strike until after he'd gone to the region and then returned to the United States. There are now some suggestions that he never planned to go there, and it was all part of a feint to try and ensure that the Iranians, when the bombs started dropping, were taken by surprise. It certainly surprised many people in this city, because we all thought, you know, well, we'll wait for Rubio to go to the region and see what he comes back with. Maybe he was never going, maybe he was, but he isn't going now.
Thank you very much indeed. Simon Marks joining us, LBC's Washington correspondent. Back to your calls in just a moment. 0345 6060 973.